Welcome, Deepti Naval. Thank you all for being here as part of the Sacred Festival in this beautiful Govindgarh Fort. Thanks to Deepa Sahi and Ketan Mehta. For many of you who don't know, but when they first thought of putting this together, Deepa and Ketan came out to our offices in Delhi and said, "So what are we doing together?" And I'm like, yeah, we'll do something. It's taken 7 years for us to get here, but this 7 years, what you've done, I think is amazing. So congratulations, both of you. I know it's been a great, it's a passion project, and I do hope at some point of time it realizes itself and actually returns some of the investment that both of you have made. So thank you, and thank you, Meeta, for bringing alive the built heritage of this part of the world. Deepti, welcome to Amritsar, and in many
Thank
ways,
you.
you should be welcoming me. This is
Yes.
pretty much my first formal time here.
Thank you,
You
Sanjay.
have you've been born and brought up here,
Yes.
and if it hadn't been for this particular conversation, I wouldn't have visited her book, and if I hadn't visited her book, I wouldn't have found so many beautiful stories that she talks about in Amritsar. But let me start with your home. Many of us today, Deepti, walked through the old city of Amritsar from Hall Bazaar and Hall Gate into the inner city,
Yeah.
and pretty much where you grew up, where your home
Yes.
was. So, describe your home to begin with.
Yeah, we had this huge house in actually towards the outer side of the walled city, within the walled city. Um, everybody knows the Khairuddin's mosque, right? What? Khairuddin's mosque? Nobody?
There's one
Are
person
you
who put his
kidding?
hand up. Two people.
हाँ किसी को तो पता होगा. Yeah. In Hall Bazaar, there's this big mosque. It's one of the biggest in this side of Punjab, actually. Yeah. So the house is right adjacent to the mosque. We used to call it Masjid. तो ये ऊंचा बड़ा सा घर था, and we would, my grandfather had bought the house from a Muslim barrister. There were two brothers. One built the mosque, and the other one, he built the house. And so when two of these pandits, my Dadaji, Pandit Gyanchand Sharma, and then another pandit, they bought the house. There was a huge door in between. It had two sections. So बीच में एक बहुत ऊंचा सा दरवाज़ा था. They had to, brick it up to make it into two homes, because this man had two wives and they were lived in either side of the of these two sections. So we used to, as little girls, we used to find this story very fascinating. We used to be very curious how he would be living with one wife this side and the other. So you know how it is, your minds. So I think it was in 1932 or 33, the house was bought. And that's where I was born in the year 1952, in this house. Of course, I was born in Victoria Jubilee Hospital.
Where we were this morning, as
I
many
was
of
there
you know.
today, and that's where I was born. And this book is full of, it starts with the house. It's all around. It's all about the house. And the masjid was a very deserted place when I came into this world. It was shut down after partition. There had been no movement, no activity there at all. My father would tell us कि यहाँ तो कबूतर थे बस और कुछ भी नहीं था. And it was a kind of a rundown, weather-streaked white mosque. There was, I think the first azan started 10 years in 57. I was 5. And I remember the night. I've written about the night when the first azan resounded in our neighborhood. And looking over, हम छत पे जब सोते थे, so we could look over, the pond which is in the masjid, and there was one man standing with a small like a, कागज से वो बना हुआ loudspeaker types, something, not quite a loudspeaker, but something like that. And
Like a
he
megaphone.
was singing, yeah, and he was, yeah, reciting this, singing this azan, and that I remember because my parents reacted so strongly to it. My father was like amazed, azan, and he picks me up, and we are standing on the chajja and overlooking the mosque, and then a few windows start to open up, and mama comes up, with water from the ghada, and she's saying, oh my god, how beautiful. And that I have memory of my childhood from the year when I was 3 years old. I have my memory goes back all the way. So don't be surprised if I remember the first azan, because I do. And then gradually एक मौलवी आए, फिर 2-4 लोग, कुछ लोग आने शुरू हुए मस्जिद में. And me and my sister would be very curious, because वो ऐसे ना अब जूता मतलब पैर में जो भी पहनते थे वो निकाल के, they would have these small caps. This is a child's observation, please remember. And they would गोरे गोरे पैर निकालते थे, पठान टाइप थे, गोरे गोरे थे, थोड़े मोटे, so we would be very curious. I mean, these are the beginnings, and the house, of course, was very enigmatic in the night.
We'll come to the night in a
yeah, in the
second, but
night.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that in those days, you were what we would call today as a precocious child,
Yeah.
running out of your house down the street, even as the person who was looking after you, shouting after you.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What is it that propelled you every day down the street past the
No,
madman?
not every day. I wasn't allowed to do that every day, but I remember once Mama and Pitaji, I would call him Piti, they had gone someplace. I didn't know where they had gone, but I just, shot out of the big gate and said, I want to go to my mama and my nanny, my sardi.
Your mother in the book has been told, you've been told she's gone for a movie.
Yeah, I came to know, and my sardi tells me, get back here. Your mama has gone to the movie, to the cinema. So I'm saying, I also want to go to cinema. So I knew the cinema was at the end of the street. It is called Regent Talkies. Katra Sher Singh, anybody knows that name? हॉल बाज़ार के अंदर टिक्कियों वाला जो है, वहाँ से राइट लो तो एक गली है, उसमें ये मकान था, और उसके गली के एंड में is this DAV college for boys. And I mean, I'm surprised.
You know more of Amritsar than the Amritsar.
I can't believe I'm saying all this sitting in Amritsar. Nobody knows anything. Oh my God, this is blasphemous.
They're all waving their hands. Deepti, they're all saying, see, we know.
Please react to these things that I talk about, because I mean, you're all Amritsaris, I hope. Yeah. Arvinder, kuch to thoda encourage karo, हाँ.
You were talking about running down the street.
So this one, this is my very first. There is another earlier memory which we will talk about later, but this is one of the earliest memories. Neri chal rahi hai, Neri shuru hui hai, and I'm running out of. I run out of the gate. I run down this small gully, which is the gully between the mosque and the house. It is this much of a gully, okay, and then I'm going on the street. So then the Neri starts. तो वो जो Regent Talkies का चौक है, उस पे एक प्लॉट वाला बैठता है जो गानों के प्लॉट्स बेचता है. उस पे छोटे छोटे वो लीफलेट्स होते हैं, उसमें फिल्म के सॉन्ग्स लिखे रहते हैं और प्लॉट भी रहता है फिल्म का. तो आई रिमेंबर दिस इमेज सो क्लियरली. आई एम स्टैंडिंग एट द चौक. माई सर्दी हैज़ बीन शाउटिंग फॉर मी, बट आई रन टू द चौक, and there's there's dust storm and there's a whirlwind, and I see his plots going round and round, and I'm like mesmerized, standing there, mesmerized by this dance of the songs, is the way I remember it. I mean, things like that. And then, of course, she comes and she grabs me and she says, Marjani, and she, pulls me back, and she brings me back to the house. And my grandmother, she gets up from her chair and she points a finger at me. She says, no good girls from good homes ever go out to cinemas on the street.
And in fact, you write about how no good girls are allowed into 3 of the cinemas
Yeah.
down the street, but they can only go to 1 of the cinemas on the street.
Yeah, no, we could only one. Yes, that was Chitra Talkies, but we were not allowed to go to Region Talkies. This one, and then another Amrit Talkies, which was very shady. I mean, sort of.
And your first movie was Ben-Hur and then Guns of Navarone.
Yeah, first was Ben-Hur, which we saw in Chitra Talkies. Chitra Talkies was what a beauty of a monument that is. I hope it stays. I hope it stays in Amritsar. Yeah.
In many ways, what was fascinating in the book was your haunting, trying
Yeah.
to go to do susu middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah. There was this 4-storied house और बहुत सारे स्टेयर केसेस थे. कुछ स्टेयर केसेस थे जो कहीं जाते नहीं थे, वो डेड एंड में ख़त्म हो जाते थे, आगे ताला लगा होता था. सो आई डोंट नो व्हाई ऑल दैट वाज देयर, बट रात को व्हेन यू हैड टू गो टू द लू, my father would encourage me to go alone. So that was a
Did you want to read a bit
nightly
from the
ordeal.
book on that
Yeah,
one?
I could do that. Yeah, I could do a bit. One recurring ordeal for me that took place in the house I grew up in was getting up in the middle of the night to relieve myself. Doing susu at night was a nightmare. In order to pee, it was necessary to climb down 2 flights of stairs in the dark. I would wake my father up, and Piti would hold the table lamp across the banister, face down, directing the light towards the huge wall of the Veda to light up the floors below. The stairs would only be dimly lit, but it was better. But that was better than nothing, and I would walk down all the way to the ground floor, talking to my father as I went. On the night that I'm recalling here, something had changed. Perhaps there was a sudden chill in the air. Summer had slipped away without warning, and when I woke up in the middle of the night, I wasn't sure if it was from the uncomfortable urge to pee or from the sudden drop in the temperature. I walked to the door that led to the staircase and began climbing down. As always, the table lamp lit up the courtyard below, but there was no light in the stairs. I groped my way down in the dark, dragging 1 foot at a time, feeling my way to the edge of each cemented step before lowering the other foot, holding on to the walls on either side. "Don't switch off the light until I tell you, okay?" I called out to my father. "And please stay right there." "I'm right here holding the lamp for you, my dear. Now go on. There's nothing to be scared of." Whatever light the lamp managed to throw on the wall was insufficient to light up anything properly. Instead, it made the place appear eerie, creating shadows that swayed in slow motion. And I knew there were things here lurking in the dark, things that appeared only at night when everyone was fast asleep. 1 flight down, and I came level with the tiny storeroom that contained the giant trunk that held our winter quilts. That trunk looked more like a creature out of a horror movie than a harmless piece of luggage. Steeling myself, I hurried past the door of the terrace. That's when I heard something move. I stood still. On the faintly lit terrace, I saw a bearded old man full of menace, bloodshot eyes, long teeth, and gnarled hands, his long fingernails painted red. He sat there amidst the cotton and spools of yarn, his mouth open in a terrifying carmine grin. A chill ran down my spine. A cat leapt from the furnace and disappeared into the dark. "Piti," I quavered. "I can't go down. It's too dark. Please come down with me. You'll fall asleep, I know." "I won't. I'm still holding the light, aren't I?" "But you're not talking to me." "I'll keep talking, all right, but hurry now and come back fast. Good girl." I shut my eyes tight. I was determined not to let the old man reappear. With both my hands on the walls, I continued to climb down slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I groped my way through the curve of the narrow stairs, dragging my palms along the chipped walls where the paint had flaked off, creating an uneasy sensation beneath my fingertips. Pity? Yes, yes, yes. I finally arrived at the bottom of the staircase. The huge wall on the left loomed overhead, a giant yellow triangle of light playing savior. I stood still in the Veda, peering into the dark to see if any figure would emerge from the veranda or the corners of the house, invisible to me in the darkness. Pity, you've gone to sleep. I haven't, beta. Are you done yet? No, I'm going to. Just keep talking to me. In the cool autumn night, little beads of sweat started to appear on my neck. I held my breath and moved towards the phatak. The gully outside the house was asleep. I looked at the latrines. It was pitch dark there. No way was I going to step in there. Piti, I called, and the huge yellow triangle on the wall nodded. At the gate, still holding my breath, I squatted at the drain, momentarily forgetting the terrors that lurked in the dark. Ah, what relief! The joy of being in the open made the whole ordeal worth it. Then something moved. I held my breath again as I heard footsteps coming closer. In the slice of light flooding in from under the gate, a shadow moved towards me. The low grunt of a drunken man returning home. I froze because behind that gully was the whole mohalla where the mochis lived, the cobblers from Rajasthan who had come across the border during the partition. Piti, no reply. Only the light of Piti's lamp wavered against the wall, reassuring me of my father's presence. The footsteps shuffled past and disappeared into the gully. A whiff of fresh breeze wafted in again. I shivered. Suddenly, I felt the shadows waiting for me in the dark had slithered up right behind me, their breath on my neck. I panicked. Piti hadn't answered. He'd gone to sleep. How could he? I was all alone now. Springing up, I shot across the length of the Veda, where the bougainvillea stood drooping, and began galloping up the stairs. Piti, my voice was now weak with fright. As I ran, my hands slapped both sides of the chipped walls. Dham, 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 dham. The shadows leapt behind me, looming overhead, clamoring for me. As I bolted around the corner of the green room, all the demons living inside that monster of a trunk called out, dancing to alien drums, a music that deafened my ears. I bounded all the way up, 2 steps at a time, never once looking back. The grotesque, grinning goblins were close at my heels, creatures of the dark, shrieking and screaming, breathing down my neck, where my 2 pigtails flung and hit each other. Dham, 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 dham. I could feel the dread creep up my back, my ears, my ankles, between the sweaty joints of my knees. Outside the storeroom, the bearded old man with his bloodshot eyes and red smile was waiting for me. As I sped around the curve, he pounced at me. I swerved and kept pelting up the stairs. He followed just 1 touch away, but I kept charging onwards till I emerged onto the Barsati, breathless and panting. Good girl. Piti lowered the lamp from the banister and finally switched off the light. See, I told you, it was nothing.
Beautiful. But there was another haunting that your mother had. Your grandparents had just passed away, and they didn't know where that kept information about who owed them what money. What happened?
Yes, there was, when first my grandfather passed away, then when grandmother
40 days.
died, BBG, when she died within 40 days of my grandfather, my mother had a very strange experience. She, there was this हिसाब की डायरी, एक डायरी थी लाल रंग का कवर, उसके अंदर सब हिसाब किताब लिखा होता था, किसको कितने पैसे देने हैं, किससे कितने पैसे लेने हैं, क्या क्या that whatever that hisab
Hisab kitab,
must
by
have been
khata.
at that time, yeah. And my mother describes the time when at night she's sleeping and she felt that BBG ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਰਾਣੇ ਉੱਠ ਕੇ ਗਏ. She woke up with the sense of her body smell and the feel of her body next to her, and she woke up because in her dream she heard BBG tell her कि कोई फला अलमारी खोल, right under the set of the sheaf of the files, there is this small diary, green in color. And so my mother gets up with this feeling that she has just left the room, and she goes up, she opens that अलमारी, दीवार के अंदर जो अलमारियाँ होती हैं, और वो पूरा नीचे से देखते हैं वो छोटी सी एक डायरी, उसमें हर एक चीज़ लिखा हुआ है हाथ से. I mean, these were the stories, little things that one hears in families all the time. And so my book is full of such, and many, I mean, the stories of Exodus, the stories of how, grandparents on the maternal side, how they had to flee Burma during the World War II, and how they walked across to India through the Assam and
To the northeast.
northeast, yeah. They walked for months together, and how
Deepti, you also have a story about Govindgarh Fort.
yes, because during during the 1965 Pakistan war, I was 12 and 13 I think. We kids were taught how to run into the trenches. जब सायरन बजेगा तो भाग के trenches में, trenches खुद गए थे सब, in the gully, in the street and all over the place in the city. तो सायरन बजता था तो भाग के बच्चों को trenches में भागना, छुपना होता था. So the Mochi kids would topple over each other and all giggling and laughing and running towards the trenches. But we girls, we would run up to the terrace, because as those Sabre jets would come whirring overhead, instead of running towards the trenches, we would go up to the terrace to see the tamasha. I mean, for us it was a month or a 20 days of great excitement, because so much was happening. War was happening in our lifetime. We'd heard all these stories, partition hoya, ye hoya, wo hoya. And my mother's side, Burma to aaye, ye wo. And Pitaji's side, partition se Lahore kaise choda, ye wo, kaise bhaag ke, jaane bacha ke aaye, ye wo. My childhood was full of stories. And here was a war in our own very lifetime. So we kids were super excited. Of course, my father at the end of once the ceasefire was announced, it was the month of September, I think. My father tells us that I'm taking you to the border, Khemkaran. And my mother says, "What are you doing? Why would you put the girls through that? Hune war khatam hui hai. I mean, it'll be devastated, that place." He says, "No, they've been having too much of an exciting time. I need them to know the reality of war." And we were driven to the Khemkaran border, and then I write about what I see, how, that Patan Nagar, that whole belt where it was like a graveyard of Patton tanks. Yeah, because how the Indian Army had gheraued the Pakistani tanks that kept moving in, and they kept quiet. They just stayed away. They let them move till a point, and then they
Encircle them.
So we saw all that. I saw a buffalo's head blown and perched on an electric pole. It was evening time, and the whole place was smoked out, and there was these tanks. Sometimes we saw a body or two hanging out of hanging out of a tank. And then I heard somebody say they were digging the ground, and we asked, "Burial?" And they said, "Nah, it's a Pakistani soldier. We have to give them their due burial." So things like that. And then, of course, when I'm sitting in New York with a friend of mine, Meenu Munawwar, she's from Lahore, and we are exchanging notes, and it's the same story, it's the same experience. हम लोग यहाँ पे वॉर को ऐसे लाइटली ले करके हम बच्चे लोग जैसे and those kids were having the same experience, and so we are exchanging notes, Meenu and I, and then we are sitting in Manhattan, and we are saying, why? I mean, look at this. I mean, human beings. Why do people have to go to war? Why do countries have to go to war? Life is so beautiful. Why can't people just live and let live? Where's the need for war?
I'm going to, yes, absolutely. Where's the need for war?
Thank
I'm
you.
going to end, Deepti, before I ask you to read one poem. I'm going to, much of your book, and you say this pretty much in the beginning of the book, that you were your mother's, I mean, you loved your mother.
Yes.
And it comes through in the book. In fact, in the first 50 pages, there's no sign or sight of that poor father, Piti. Piti only arrives much later in the book. But you
Yeah.
loved your mother, and you loved everything about her.
Yes,
Her
everything.
smell, the way she dressed, you
Yes.
tried to emulate her. Tell us a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask you to read one poem because they want us to
Yeah,
now.
I was such a mama's girl. Mama was to me a most beautiful woman, and because she had been also been, she was had been born in Burma. She had gone to the Jesus and Mary convent in Mandalay, and there was something very lyrical about the way she spoke. She had this beautiful voice, and she was very graceful. She loved the arts. She wanted to be an artist herself. She was a painter, but she wanted to be a performing artist. She loved dance, music, drama. I remember, I have memory of her directing plays, और हमारे hall कमरे में वो rehearsals किया करती थी. I remember Mama, directing this play. And then in Chitra Talkies, after, when she was in Lahore, she was living in Lahore when the partition happened. These girls, they were, with the B.C. Sanyal painting studio in Lahore. They were studying art, all of these people. And when partition happened, at that time, just before also, these girls would go into little mohallas and sing Ekta ke gaane. Keeping people together. This is when you could see that kuch galat hone wala hai, something is going to happen, things are going to change. And then, of course, then she tells me about how one Muslim tangewala hid 3 girls under बोरियों के नीचे उनको छुपा के, an old tangewala, he brought the girls out of the riot-torn area and brought them to the safety of a camp. My mother used to tell me stories all the time. My knack for storytelling comes from Mama, because I think ever since I got to understand, and I would just keep, every night, it was a ritual every night, I would hear so many stories of Burma and stories of, Lahore. And of course, my parents loved Lahore. Lahore was one city they could never get over.
And Deepti, your acting came from your sister. What did she make you do?
My sister, she's just 2 years older than me, but she used to bully me. वो अपने खुद को entertain करने के लिए मुझे कहती थी. We would both be studying in the green room upstairs. I called it the green room because it was painted green. So वो हमारी study room था. तो हम बैठ के दोनों बहनें जो हैं वो पढ़ती थी. She would get, I was not really studying ever really much. या तो drawing book में fill करती रहती थी, या साधना नंदा वो मैं चिपकाती रहती थी उसके अंदर तस्वीरें काट काट के मेरी अलमारी में. दीदी would get bored and she would say, अच्छा दीपी come now, चल हुन तू चूची बन जा. And I would instantly turn into this moron and start तुतलाने लगती थी मैं. Tutlana and narrating some story that which didn't make any sense, of course, just making up anything, or just put on this act for my sister just to entertain her. Then when she had enough of me, she would say, chal theek hai, hun tu theek ho ja. So this was for me my first lessons in acting, switch on and switch off, action and cut, And that happened because of my sister, because I never was a trained actor. I never went to an acting school. I learnt all this from my childhood days. Chal, action, and now cut. So wo sab.
Will you end by reading a poem from one of your, maybe your first book or the second book, whichever one?
Yeah, I could read something. Can't find the one I was looking for, but I can read something else. Smaller poem. And then I can read a poem in English. चलो दूर तक अजनबी रास्तों पे पैदल चलें, कुछ ना कहें. चलो दूर तक अजनबी रास्तों पे पैदल चलें, कुछ ना कहें. अपनी अपनी तन्हाइयाँ लिए सवालों के दायरों से निकलकर रिवाजों की सरहदों के परे हम यूं ही साथ चलते रहें, कुछ ना कहें. तुम अपने माजी का कोई जिक्र न छेड़ो. माजी इज पास्ट. तुम अपने माजी का कोई जिक्र न छेड़ो. मैं भूली हुई कोई नज्म ना दोहराऊं. तुम कौन हो, मैं क्या हूँ, इन सब बातों को बस रहने दें, कुछ ना कहें. चलो दूर तक अजनबी रास्तों पे पैदल चलें.
Thank you. And something from Black Queen?
Thank you, thank you. Everybody knows Smita Patil, right? Yes. This is a poem for her. Always on the run, chasing our dreams, we met each time at baggage claim, VIP lounges, check-in counters. Stood a while together among gaping crowds, spoke unspoken words, yearning to share yet afraid of ourselves. All around us, people cheering, leering, and we like spectacles amidst the madness, trying to live a moment, a glance, a touch, a feeling to hold on to and move on. The last time we sat together waiting for a flight, I remember I had said, there must be another way of living this life. For a long time, you remained silent. Then, without blinking, without turning, said, there isn't. Today you are gone, and I'm still running, still trying to prove you wrong.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
Deepti Naval, actor, writer, poet. Thank you, Deepti, for coming all the way. Deepti, in
you.
between, had to cancel, and then I said, even at the last minute, if you can join us, we would love you to. So thank you so much for taking out the time to be here with us at Govindgarh, of course, and in Amritsar. So thank you.
And thank you all for
so
being
much.
here for me today. Thank you.